The ruins of great cities do not tell us everything about the people who built them. In these mud-walled streets, a mystery 5,000 years old still lingers. The key to it may lie with the river Indus, a mystical silver serpent that rises in the Himalayas and uncoils through an immense landscape. People settled on its banks despite the floods. They tamed the rivers and transformed desert into gardens. But what do we really know about them? A century of archaeological digs still hasn't solved the mystery. This civilization flourished for 500 years, then vanished into historical limbo. But it left behind a sacred heritage: water. The Indus, born of the Himalayan snows and bounded by Pakistan and India, is 3,000 kilometers long. Its valley was home to a flourishing civilization. For a long time, our image of this civilization was blurred. The first archaeologists thought they had discovered cities of children. They unearthed toys, dice, whistles, marbles. The people seemed oblivious of death and war. They appeared a carefree, happy population, the Arcadians of the Indus. Mohenjo-Daro lay on the banks of the Indus, in the Sindh province of southern Pakistan. "2,000 years before Christ, this land was settled by newcomers from the border regions of ancient Persia. Today it is desert. But on this spot they founded the largest city of the Indus civilization, with 40,000 people and an area of a square kilometre. The streets reflect the genius of their builders. The city layout is a model of ancient town planning. Residential blocks are defined by long, straight arteries crossing at right angles. The main street is never less than 9 meters wide. It's easy to imagine it filled with colourful crowds. Imagine the archaeologists' surprise when they discovered that the entire city had a complex water management system. It had 80 public toilets. In the residential areas, every house had a tiled bathroom and its own well. Sewers serviced the whole city. In a unique system for a centre 4,000 years old, drains for wastewater, gutters and water collectors were dug in the main streets. In cul-de-sacs and smaller streets, wastewater was poured into bottomless jars. Some crossroads had brick containers for rubbish disposal. The most spectacular discovery was made at the top of the city. On a huge brick platform, the last refuge from the devastating floods of the Indus, the people of Mohenjo-Daro built a great bath. For their daily ablutions they came to this pool. Round about it was a gallery with fountains. The city was Dolavira, a junction for the trade routes crisscrossing the marshy region of Kutch. The Indus builders mostly used brick, unfired bricks for walls and fired bricks for foundations. In Dolavira, archaeologists also discovered monumental stone walls, 15 meters high. The walls testify to the mastery and science of their masons, who must already have been familiar with plumb lines and water levels. D'Oliveira's carpenters used Himalayan cedar in columns that fitted perfectly into the finely cut and polished stonework. Here too, a complex water system serviced the city. Water was used to clean the streets. It ran off into underground conduits, which carried it beyond the city walls. D'Oliveira finally yielded up some of its secrets. Professor Bisht believes that the city had 16 reservoirs all around it. Thanks to his work, the city plan can be recreated after 5,000 years. D'Oliveira was surrounded by 250,000 cubic meters of precious water. The city covered 48 hectares and had a population of 20,000. In its centre was a citadel with solid walls. Another wall separated the upper part of the city from the lower. The city had many gardens, warehouses and granaries. D'Oliveira's wealth came from the wheat and barley trade, and its people soon turned to the nearby sea. Even after the general plan of the city was recreated, it still took archaeologists some time to work out how the reservoirs surrounding it were filled. Drinking water has always been scarce in the Kutch marshes. Today, the sea has retreated, leaving behind a salty desert. The remaining villages have just a few wells of brackish water. And yet the people of the Indus survived in this hostile environment. 5,000 years ago, in a land alternately burnt by the sun and swept by floods, a civilization grew up because it knew how to manage water. Every year in July, the monsoon covers the Pakistani countryside in a blanket of rain. That's when the Indus, swollen by the melting Himalayan snows, breaks its banks. It spreads everywhere, covering the earth with a coat of clay. But the floods are not considered a calamity. People welcome and respect them as a godsend. Their properties are mainly out of reach of the rising waters. How did the people of the Indus manage to tame the devastating floods 5,000 years ago? The archaeologists found the answer in the ground around D'Oliveira. In dry riverbeds, which become torrents during the monsoon, they found traces of stone structures. These were the remains of dams built to control the flow of water. That was the answer. The people of D'Oliveira changed the course of rivers to fill gigantic reservoirs, the largest of which was 79 meters long and more than 7 meters deep. Nor was that all. For the water to flow from one reservoir to another, the architects had to use the natural incline of the terrain. The upper city, into which the water flows initially, is situated 13 meters higher than the lower side. That was how they retained the water. Aqueducts carried it to the heart of the city. The stored water also made it possible to irrigate the fields for most of the year. The plan of the city was entirely devised to collect the precious water. Dolavira, mistress of the river, seemed to float on mirrors of silver. The citadel at the top of the city also had an ingenious system for collecting rainwater. Gutters channeled rainwater into a large reservoir outside Dolavira. For years, archaeologists pondered the question, what distinction did the Dolavirans make between water from the rivers and water from the sky? For the people of Dolavira, water was the fundamental element in their survival. Its marriage with the earth made crops possible. Its alliance with man allowed souls to be purified. Dolavira is no longer in the path of any river. No splash or trickle disturbs the silence of the ruins. Another mystery has long haunted this region. Civilization developed along the river Indus. So why are most of the rediscovered cities in the middle of inhospitable sand deserts? Why do they dot desert valleys? The Hagar Hakra, a river long thought to be a mere legend, once flowed through the Tar Desert. The river has now disappeared, but not without trace. 4,500 years ago, a powerful river flowed through this plain. So the Hagar Hakra, said to have risen high in the Himalayas, was not a myth after all. While excavating some unusual earthworks, archaeologists discovered dikes that protected fields from flooding. They found the same brick walls, the same system of water management, the same dams. Soon villages appeared in the most remote regions of the vast country. Civilization was spreading. In the walled cities, artisans were able to perfect their skills. Every city had its craftsman's quarter. Ideas, methods, and inventions spread together with trade. In the markets, in jewelers' workshops, scales and weights appeared. The streets teemed with hard-working populations. They mastered the art of working copper and bronze. Artists carved ivory and set semi-precious stones in gold to make jewellery. The level of production was such that the civilization seemed on the verge of an industrial era. With their first trading journeys, the people of the Indus took care to mark their products with clay stamps or copper plates. But their favourite method was seals made of steatite, a material that hardens when heated. Merchants hung them around their necks, and they were widely used. The development of long-distance trade led the Indus merchants to forge alliances and to invent the concept of the contract. To seal the contract, they used finely carved stone cylinders, similar to those in Mesopotamia. The Indus script has yet to find its Rosetta Stone. What do these signs mean? What do they tell us about the structure of a civilization that for a long time was thought to be ruled by a single man, the priest-king? Will these 9 stone figures keep their secret forever? Did the northern entrance of the Dolavira citadel bear the name of the sovereign who ruled the region? Some experts think so. But others, pointing to the wheels in the inscription, think it represents the first example of a traffic sign put up at the entrance of a city. The archaeologists can only dream. Perhaps somewhere the miraculous treasure awaits them, the find that will solve the mystery of a civilization whose thought eludes us. Did it have poets and writers? What were its legends? What was its concept of the world? Without these texts, we will never really understand this civilization, which soon set its eyes on faraway lands. "4,000 years ago, the people of the Indus set out to find the mineral resources they lacked. They needed copper, tin, silver, and lapis lazuli. Their caravans took the road west, towards Baluchistan and today's Iran. They founded colonies over 1,500 kilometers from their homeland, on the borders of Afghanistan. Soon they were looking beyond the Kutch marshes and the Indus Delta. Beyond were lands that attracted them, lands where they could establish harbours. A strategy of exchange and trade was taking shape. Up until then, the people of the Indus Valley had only been boatmen. Their craft went up and down the rivers, carrying passengers and goods over hundreds of kilometres. These small craft live on in Pakistan. Flat-bottomed boats, suited for shallow waters, still ply the rivers. Their design has hardly changed in 4,000 years. Cautiously, the first navigators followed the shores of the Sea of Oman westward. Sea transport soon proved its value. It was faster than the long and vulnerable overland routes, and above all, boats carried far more cargo. A fabulous odyssey began. The first navigators sailed toward the unknown and discovered the world. Sailing from Harappa, Mohenjo-daro or Dolavira, the boats reached the Oman Peninsula. Then, via the Strait of Hormuz, they sailed the Persian Gulf all the way to faraway Mesopotamia, 3,500 kilometers from the Indus Valley. History teaches that even the greatest civilizations are destined to disappear. The Indus civilization was no exception. From 1800 BC onward, it was no longer mentioned in Mesopotamian tablets. Little by little, the streets of its cities emptied of people. The craftsmen's quarters no longer rang to the sound of tools. The buildings and irrigation systems were left to crumble. The great cities were ravaged by time and the elements. How can we explain this sudden decay? Theories abound. Some experts think the empire succumbed to invaders from Central Asia. Others suggest that it was devastated by floods or earthquakes. What cataclysm brought about the end of these magnificent cities? And where did their people go? Did they die? Did they flee? Did the disappearance of the Hagahakra River force irreversible changes to their way of life? The empire literally fell apart. The fertile lands around Harappa, Mohenjo-daro or Dholavira formed independent states. New crops appeared, and the peasants began to raise horses, camels and donkeys. Gradually, what had been one people adopted a variety of cultures.